introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Romi Wittman, and I am the Program Director and an Assistant Professor in the Organizational Leadership Program at the University of Arizona South. Joining me today is Kasey Hill with Greater Tucson Leadership. And she is going to tell us first what a typical day looks like for her as the Executive Director of GTL.
Yeah, thank you. Hi. So as an executive director of an organization, I really kind of focus on 4 key areas on a day-to-day basis. One of them is program development and implementation. The second is board management, board development. The third is going to be fundraising and community relations. And the fourth is administrative duties. I'm the only staff person for my organization, so we're very small. So unfortunately, a lot of the administrative duties, I probably spend more time on administrative work than I would prefer. But really, it's those 4 key areas that I'm working on every day. And some days it will be, more focus on program development. Other days it may be the administrative duties where I'm invoicing and doing some things like that. But those are really the 4 key areas.
Can you tell us a little bit about Greater Tucson Leadership and what it is and what it does in the community?
Sure, great. So Greater Tucson Leadership is a 10-month-long program. It started in 1980, and it's a leadership development organization that really focuses on civic engagement. So we have a group of 35 to 40 people each year that go through our program, and each month they meet for 1 full day to learn about a different aspect of the community. So they're learning about local government, economic development, arts and culture, education, really an intense look at our community and understanding the systems that shape our community.
And they also learn a lot of leadership skills as part of that too. So these are professionals in their fields that have come to learn about leadership as well as their community, correct?
Yes. Yeah, we do a positive leadership curriculum that was designed specifically for programs like ours. It's really focused on that community development piece and as well as your own personal leadership.
What are some of the comments that you hear from students why they're pursuing GTL for the leadership component as well as the community component? What draws people to GTL?
Sure. A lot of it is, so a lot of their companies are asking them to do this professional development piece. They're looking to move up in their companies. They're looking to get more involved in the community. So that's a lot of the reason that people get involved in our organization, because they haven't really had a lot of that development. Even people who are later on in their careers, we have people in our program that are in their 50s and 60s. Who maybe have not really had that opportunity to do that self-reflection and that self-awareness, which is something that we really promote in our organization. The leadership development piece of it is really that self-reflection. It's really kind of understanding who you are, what your purpose is, and identifying those things so you can be better community advocates.
Mm-hmm. Now, how did you get to be in your role as the executive director at GTL?
Sure. I'm originally from Kentucky, a Kentucky native, and I started out my career in journalism and communications. And I worked in that field for a while, but unfortunately, the newspaper industry, wasn't really what it was when I first started. So I was looking for other job opportunities. And what really helped me get this job at GTL is my previous career as the communications director for an economic development organization in a very small town in Kentucky. And that's where I was introduced to these leadership programs. I went through a leadership program in Kentucky. And because of my job, it was really community driven and civic engagement focused. So I spent a lot of time interacting with elected officials and really developed a passion for community development and leadership development. And so when I moved to Tucson, the job with GTL had opened up. And because of my experience working in community development and my experience going through a leadership program previously helped me get this job, which I love. It's really a great program.
Now, you mentioned that GTL is small. You are the only full-time employee, but you're part of the bigger Tucson Metro Chamber of Commerce. So knowing that, what does the Metro Chamber, or would GTL, if they were to hire, look for in candidates? What kinds of leadership qualities would they be looking for?
I think really something that's really important to focus on, especially from my perspective, is behavioral intelligence, kind of that emotional intelligence piece. What if I were going to hire someone, because we are so ingrained in the community and we're interacting with so many people in the community, elected officials, public leaders, people in the private sector, the nonprofit sector. It's really important that someone has the skills to be able to build those relationships and be the face of the organization. And I think that if you talk to people at the chamber, they would probably say the same thing. It's really great if you can do an Excel spreadsheet, but at the end of the day, it's about those relationships and that community development piece that's vital for organizations like ours.
And that leadership component too. I am a GTL graduate. I went through the program in 2011, and while I was also teaching for the org leadership program, so that was really fun for me, and to be able to see the application of leadership directly in a professional development context.
Yeah.
And that's what we try to do in our degree program as well, because as you said, it's those soft skills. A lot of people, something I always tell my students is you can be very, very good at your career. And what happens when you're very, very good, you get promoted. And this happened, I always tell the story. It was someone very close to me. I won't say who, but he was a brilliant engineer, promoted into management, and not a very good manager because he's an engineer.
Right.
And he has those very hard technical skills, a scientist, loving, wonderful human being, but did not know how to manage people and just wasn't very good at management. And they didn't teach him. And so how can you expect people to throw them into this with no training? And so I think GTL serves that role in some capacity, as does the org leadership program.
It actually reminds me of someone who has gone through the program previously. He works for a large company in Arizona and is now the owner is retiring, and he's now stepping into that leadership role. And so the owner of the company really wanted him to go through our program so he could develop those skills. And it has been, I had coffee with him recently, and he was talking about just how transformational the experience has been. And, this is a man who's, who's middle-aged. So he said, he never really expected to be at a point in his life where he was doing the self-reflection and really learning all these things about himself. And part of our curriculum is focusing on 7 capacities of leadership. So it's authenticity, purpose, advocacy, resiliency, kind of focusing on these core concepts that a lot of times as people and as professionals, we're so in the moment and focusing on the systems and I need to get this project done and that project done that we don't really stop to reflect on ourselves and what our strengths are and also our weaknesses and kind of focusing on those aspects of our life and how we can develop those effectively. And that's one of the things that we really promote in this program. It's so vital to do that. And as a society, we're not always that great at it.
And a lot of times, like you said, employers are not as progressive as that employer was. They don't see the need. They think you can just pick it up as you go. And it's a lot trickier than that.
It is.
And when you talk about authenticity, one of the things we teach in org leadership in one of our introductory courses, the leadership function, is the Kozes and Posner 5 aspects of a highly effective leader.
Yeah.
And one of those is being, you lead from the heart and communicate effectively. In other words, you can't lead if you're selling a message you don't believe yourself.
Right.
And so you have, and understanding your own core values before you try to lead others, because if you don't know that, people can see through it.
Right. And we focus too a lot on the difference between authority versus leadership. I think a lot of times because somebody's in a position of authority, they have a specific title, they have the title of president or CEO or something like that, people automatically feel like they need to follow that person. But with the authority piece, people feel obligated to follow you. Whereas leadership, people are compelled to follow you. And so identifying those differences, and a lot of that leadership piece is, are you leading authentically? Gratitude is one of the capacities that we talk about. So really being thankful for the other people that are on your team and expressing that.
And being genuine.
There was a really interesting workshop I went to recently, and they were talking about, it was specifically designed for nonprofit directors, and they were focusing on the level of talent development in the field. And one of the things that I found really interesting is that most nonprofits have less than 1% of their budget set aside for talent development. So a lot of organizations are not promoting that within their companies. I don't know what that's like for the private sector, but for nonprofits, I mean, being able to develop those leaders, I mean, that is so vital to the health of the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of companies and organizations are not investing in that. And that piece is really important.
I think, again, because it's a soft skill, they think, well, people can pick it up, and they're driven by the bottom line, and that takes money and time, and so it gets overlooked.
Yeah.
And some people can adapt to that on the fly, but most can't. I couldn't until I had training in that and really had to focus.
Yeah.
And well, basically, what can org leadership students do to prepare for jobs in the field? What should they be doing now? We talked a little bit before we started about things we wish we had known earlier in our careers. What are some things org leadership students should be thinking about?
Yeah, I think it's that self-development piece that's really important. I know, I'm in my mid-30s, and 15 years ago, I wish I had taken the time to understand how important it is to do that self-development. I didn't at the time. And luckily, I've been put in situations where I've had jobs that I had employers that promoted that. But really kind of understanding what your strengths are. One of the things that we do in the program is Clifton Strengths Finder, which is I highly recommend. It was life-changing for me. It was really transformational as far as my career goes. But even personally, I got so much out of it. There were strengths that I had that I didn't realize I had until it was pointed out to me in that assessment. And then I started to reflect on that, and being able to kind of own those strengths has been transformational for me. It's improved my confidence. It's made me realize I sought a job specifically that would play to those strengths. So I think doing that early on is vital. You should absolutely do some of those assessments, really kind of understand who you are, what strengths you have, what can you bring to the table and offer an organization.
And that's one of the things we do make our students do. We don't do Myers-Briggs. Myers-Briggs is kind of a dirty word in our corner of the world. But we do have like the big five. We do personality assessments with them. And we tell them take it for what it is. Don't think this is a label you have to carry your whole life. It's really for you to explore yourself.
It's a tool.
It's a tool. And I work with students, and I do the same thing with them. That what you talked about is identifying what their strengths are, because I always tell people, we can't see in ourselves because we're too close. And we tend to discount our strengths. And we also tend to not necessarily see our weaknesses as well, or we amplify them. And that's where a trusted colleague or, a mentor can be so transformational, so impactful.
And I think too, understanding, none of us are perfect, and being kind to yourself and understanding like you're going to mess up, my weaknesses come out every single day, but just kind of realizing that not letting one hiccup kind of prevent you from moving forward and pushing forward. It's that resiliency piece that we talk about a lot in our program.
Now, how much do you focus on emotional intelligence, EQ, in your program?
Sure. We actually just had a workshop about emotional intelligence this morning. It's mentioned quite frequently within our core curriculum. So that authenticity, we bring in that emotional intelligence piece into that. And again, we just had a workshop on it this morning for people in the public and our alumni of our program. And it was really interesting to the workshop itself really kind of focused on how can you change your behaviors in the moment of stress and conflict, because that's one of the things that we don't really do well as leaders. We talk about leadership a lot. There are a lot of, thousands and thousands of leadership books, but when you're in the moment and you have a conflict on your staff that you're trying to mediate, or maybe you're directly involved in, having that emotional intelligence in that moment is so key to making that come out in a successful, positive way. And we're not really good at managing that at all. Even just small things in the morning, as you're getting ready, maybe you're running late, maybe, your kids make a mess, or maybe the dog pees on the floor, and maybe you get stuck in traffic. There's many, many things that kind of affect our attitude for the day. And that it can take 4 hours for one negative situation for you to overcome that. It can take 4 hours. So, I think kind of being self-aware kind of helps you manage those small hiccups, because we have those every single day.
Mhm.
So we focus a lot on that in our program.
Do you focus at all on cultural intelligence, which is something that's coming up that we address in our program, because diversity is important, and there's numerous studies, lots of research show that companies that embrace diversity have positive results as a result of that. So I was wondering if you've incorporated that into the curriculum.
Sure, I would say that's actually kind of one of the key pieces of our program, because we have such a wide sector of the community that go through our programs, and they're interacting with so many different people. So part of the learning in our program is working on teams with people who think very differently than you and have different perspectives and different backgrounds. We have people in our program who maybe only have a high school degree or a GED, all the way to people who have PhDs. And having that diversity in our program has really, I think, broaden the experience for most of the people that have gone through it. They're getting to interact with people that have just completely different perspectives. And as you're going into the community, and that's one of the things that I try to teach the people in our program, our goal in the program is that as people are learning the challenges that our community is facing, that they will feel empowered to go out and create positive change. Well, in order to do that, you have to work with some people who are really difficult, people who have different opinions, different backgrounds, different perspectives, and it's gonna cause some conflict. So how can you navigate that and be appreciative of the differences that they bring? Because everyone has something valuable to bring to the table. So how can you put aside those differences and focus on getting the job done?
And it's so key right now. We live in a climate, current climate, where people argue a lot, and we all get on social media and fight with one another. And so there isn't this necessarily a feeling that we need to have common ground. And it's one of the courses that we have for our students in the org leadership program is conflict management.
Yeah.
And how do you approach that? Staying true to yourself, but also being open to finding a resolution, because in most circumstances, there is a solution that will fit for everybody.
Yeah.
You just have to find it, and you have to be open to it.
Yeah. So one of the capacities of positive leadership is reason. And we had a really great discussion in our class day, it was just a couple of months ago, specifically about civil discourse and how we are constantly kind of being polarized. And as a society, we're moving more and more in different directions. And there's not a lot of people that are coming together and just having really constructive dialogue about some of the challenges that we're facing. So that's one of the things that we talk a lot about is the amygdala hijack. and understanding that, in the moment when someone says something that upsets you, you want to react immediately because it's your amygdala, right? Yeah. Your amygdala is like, no. Fight or flight, and one of the things we talk about is just how to kind of take a step back and take a deep breath and realize that most people are coming from a place of good intentions. They just think differently than you. It's actually kind of interesting. My husband and I, just on a personal note, a few weeks ago, we disagree on things from time to time. And we were having this really in-depth discussion, and we both realized that we start from a completely different place. I'm starting from a place where, what's beneficial to the community as a whole? He's coming from, what are the individual rights of the person? And so being able to identify that we're starting from a completely different place has really kind of been interesting and helped us as we have conversations and disagree on things. We realize now that, he's coming from a different place than I am, and I can kind of stop and reflect on where he's coming from. And I think that we need to do that more just in our daily interactions, because everyone is coming from a different place. Everyone is.
And that's something we try to teach in org leadership.
Good.
Well, I think we're about out of time. So I just wanted to thank you for being here today and taking time out of your day. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
And if you have any questions about UA South or the org leadership program, get in touch.